Hey everyone, this is Jason Long with JH Media Group, and in our SaaS Growth webinar today, we're going to be talking about development, planning, project management, developers, managing people, all sorts of things. So this is going to help you keep from losing money, wasting time. It's going to help you get your SaaS project off right, going, and making money right away. So please give us your comments. Let me know what we did right. Let us know what we did wrong. Let me know how we can improve things. And thanks so much. I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get into it. This is Georgia. I don't remember if we talked about Georgia last time or not. I think I mentioned something about her. Georgia's usually in here, but I don't think she is today. Georgia is a good dog. Look how good, look at that face. She's a good dog. But every morning when I let her out, she goes and she does her business right beside my neighbor's trash can. This has to do with development, by the way. Does her business right beside my neighbor's trash can. I have a really good relationship with my neighbor, but every day when he gets up in the morning to go walk to his car, he has to walk right by his trash can. And if I'm not careful, really careful, he's gonna step in a giant pile of dog poop. And it's gonna be my fault. And that's kind of the way it is sometimes working with, oh, we got Ricardo as well. Hey, Ricardo. That's kind of the way it goes sometimes working with developers. We've got really, really good developers and they work really hard and they do a really good job. But if you're not managing things properly, you're gonna end up getting up in the morning and stepping into a pile of dog poop. And it's not really their fault because they were doing kind of what they thought they were supposed to do. So today's webinar is gonna be all about not stepping in dog poop. I hope it's helpful. And she is a good dog, and developers are good people, and designers are good people, and project managers are good people. They're all good people, but let's not step in dog poop. Thank you, Jice. Yes, we've got the poo emoji from Jice. Okay, so moving right along. Oh, come on, computer. I can't move to my next slide. There we go. All right, so first lesson, today's lesson. If you're building a SaaS system, the driving force is you. It has to be you. So this is something so many people have come to me and asked me about over the years. They're like, well, I'm not tech savvy. And so I'm gonna hire a product manager to come in and help me with this. I wanna hire a project manager to manage these pieces of the thing. I wanna do whatever. That's not gonna work. It's not gonna work, it's never gonna work. The driving force behind any SaaS build business has to be you. You have to do it. If you're gonna be the one running the business and building the thing, it's gotta be you. You can manage your developers. You can manage a product manager in the long run after you have a more mature product. But especially in the beginning, the driving force is always you. In fact, I had this conversation yesterday with somebody who said, well, I got this idea. I want to do this thing. I'm just going to hire a team that are going to do the whole thing. And the answer is nope, they're not. They're not going to do the whole thing. It's not going to work. I can't tell you how many times. Actually, this has happened 3 times in the last week, I think, that somebody came in and they were like, I want to do this thing. I'm going to hire somebody to do it. You got to know it. You got to learn it. I think that's my next thing. No one is going to build this better than you. So that's my first development lesson here, that people want to do this all the time. All right, what do we have from Dan? Dan said, I'm learning Kubernetes. I don't know that. Hold on, let me move my little slide over so I can read the whole thing. GCP transitioning to for hosting projects. I figured I need to learn it myself. Yeah, you do. You got to learn the stuff yourself. You don't necessarily have to be a developer. You don't have to learn how to code every piece, but you should learn the basics of what you're doing, because if you don't, it is not going to work. The stuff is going to fall apart. So learn your stuff. So that's my first quick, easy lesson. Oh, so know what you're doing. There's another little piece of that slide. All right. going to scoot these down so I can read better. There we go. So it means you got to know all about these kinds of things. Now, this isn't just design and development, it's all the other stuff too. And this kind of falls into my previous webinar where we talked about running the business and validation and some other things. But when you're running the SaaS business and when you're growing the SaaS business, you got to know all of these things. You don't have to be a UX designer, but you got to be able to at least look through and understand where things work and where things don't work. You got to know where to rely on your team or where to push things forward. You have to understand your build process. If you don't understand your build process, if you don't have a build process, man, it's going to be tough on you. Security, I don't know security in and out. I can't tell you all the ways that people can hack a site, but I know I get deep enough down into the system to know where people are doing things basically right and basically wrong. I know if we have security tools or we don't have security tools. And of course, if you're building a SaaS business, you probably already know you're building a marketing and sales business. So you must be a marketer and a salesperson. So if you're not in marketing, if you're not in sales, if you're a developer, you're a designer, and you're like, I'm going to push that off to somebody else and give you a 100% chance, is not going to work, or a 99.9% chance is not going to work. So you've got to know your marketing automation, you got to know your sales, you got to know your planning, all of that. And even though these things seem like they're not a part of development, people are like, oh, well, we're talking about development today. What's up with that? It is. It absolutely is. Your sales comes as part of the process. You've got lead scoring. You've got all sorts of triggers and automations that go into your system, and that fits into your sales process, your marketing processes, your marketing team. All of this, it all comes back to development. So you've got to know all of these things. You don't necessarily have to know pay and cost. You have to know pay because you got to be able to pay your people, but maybe not as much as far as development is concerned for that. But I think pretty much everything else. And loads more. Tons and tons and tons of stuff more. You've got to know it. You're the driving force, so be the driving force. And if you try to put that on somebody else, it's going to fail. So don't think you can. All right, what do you really need to know? All of this stuff. So I did this slide just to really impress on you, because a lot of people are like, well, maybe I don't need all of it. No, you do. You need all of it. Moving along. Wants and needs. Okay, so this is a really important piece to know as we delve a little deeper into the development piece of this. So we have different roles in the system, and I want to explain what each group needs and what they want, and what they need. So this first one is something I struggle with a lot, and I think everybody else in here does as well. All the other people building these businesses do as well. Entrepreneurs, they want action, they need focus. They're pushing to get to market, but they need, sometimes they need to finish, sometimes they need to get to market. But what they end up doing is they're like, I can go to this market, go to this market, and go to this market, and go to this market. Sorry, hit my mic. But they need to focus. And a lot of times they need help focusing. Whereas project managers, they want structure, they need resources and timelines. When you're working with your project managers or whoever's managing your project, even if it's you have to want structure. If you're project managing and you don't want structure, you're doing it wrong. And they need resources and timelines. And when I'm saying resources, I'm saying this in the project management terminology for resources, meaning people, materials, etc. And of course, they need timelines to know when they can get things done, when are things due, so that they can put this puzzle together to meet this timeline. Designers want flexibility and they need constraints. So what ends up happening with designers is they get an information architecture, or they just get carte blanche on something. They're just like, hey, go design this fun thing. And they add in a million different pieces to that. So what we have here, Roland. Silicon PM agrees 100% with this assessment. And money, materials, management, machine power, 5M. Yes, exactly. Thank you, guys. All right, so designers want flexibility and they need constraints. What happens with designers is they want to build the world, and it's so fast and so easy for them just to add that little button, just to add that drop down, to add this whole new feature. And that won't work, because then your project will never get done. And your developers will take a look at it and go, that's great, but this is going to be 10 times the amount of cost that it was going to be before, because we're not even talking about the same project anymore. And this happens all the time. Being a designer, I'm guilty of this. So I'm elaborating more on the design side. So anybody, especially if you're working with designers, make sure they have their constraints. Developers, they want specifications and they need deadlines. So what that means is that when you're working with a developer, who said, Jice said, just discovered attendees are sharing only to panelists by default. Oh, thank you, Jice. I think that's the way it's set up. I think I have to do that. Let me see if I can set up, make it so that you can send to everybody. No, it's set up that way. So I'll just, when somebody, all panelists, entities, each of us can do it so everybody can read. Okay. All right, cool. I'm going to keep moving along. And yes, thank you, Jice. Thank you for pointing that out. This is only my second time using the Zoom webinar system, so still getting used to it a little bit. Okay, so where was I? Developers want specifications. So when developers are building something, they need to know exactly what they're doing. There's no halfway, there's no maybe. There's the worst word in development is should. It either does it or it doesn't do it. There's no should do it. There's no maybe it'll do it. There's no kinda does it. It either does it or it doesn't do it. So when you're giving developers work, it's all about specifications, and those guys need deadlines because they're optimists. There's a really famous book called The Mythical Man Month by Brooks. I want to say it's Albert Brooks. It was written in the 70s. And he talks, the first three chapters talk about, or part of the first three chapters talk about the optimism of developers. So developers are always optimists. They're always going to think they can get things done faster than they can. So they need deadlines all the time. All right. And then marketers, they want conversions and they need data. So when you're managing those marketers, like they're aiming to make business, but what they always need is as much data as possible. And that's the constraint with them. So we're coming, I think this pretty well covers all these items. Any questions on all this stuff? This is key to managing your team. You need to understand what people want and what they need. If you can't understand that, you're going to have a hard time managing people. And this pretty well lays out the overview for all of this. So any questions on this? I'm going to take a sip of my coffee. All right, there we go. Yeah, we're good. That would be me. Let's see. Okay, okay, cool. Moving along. More on this later. Yeah, we're going to deep dive into this part kind of near the end of this. I got one of my last lessons covers this pretty heavily. Okay. I'll move this over so I can read all my text. All right. So if you're going to do this, if you're going to be building the SaaS system, make sure to do the prerequisite reading. This is, if you fall into any one of those categories, or you're looking at falling into those categories, make sure you do the prerequisite reading. I actually think I put this on the slide in the wrong place. I think I moved it and I didn't save it. So it was supposed to be up above, where it was like, if you're the driving force, so do the reading. And I'm going to send out some recommended reading for anybody that's running a SaaS system, to everyone in the to all attendees today after we're done. Okay, lesson number 2. This is a construction project. The number one way that I convey to clients, or when we're building a new SaaS system, as to how this thing is going to go, is to compare it to a construction project. And what that means is we talk about a lot of different things as far as that goes, but it's really similar. It's really, really similar to an actual construction project. There's There's so many parallels, and people make huge mistakes when it comes to this all the time that I'm hoping I can help you guys avoid in just a second. All right. So we've got, the first lesson is we've got specialized roles doing specialized things. And that's why we just covered who wants what, who needs what. So these are some of the specialized roles we have in the system. We've got the stakeholder, which is probably you, or entrepreneur, probably you as well, me at least. The architect, project manager, graphic designer, web designer, UX designer, SEO, which is a search engine optimization specialist or search engine optimizer. I'm just going to go with SEO. I think they actually call themselves SEOs. Writers, front-end developers, back-end developers, database specialists. I kind of put database specialists in there because I kind of started delving into the lots of other kinds of specialists. There's so many different kinds of specialists in here. And this comes down to one of the top things people mess up when they're doing these kinds of projects, is that in order to be a great architect or a great project manager, you can't also be a great graphic designer. You can't also be a great front-end developer. It takes specialization in all of these things. I've got another slide about that in just a minute. So we have specialized roles doing specialized things. And just like if you were a contractor, you need let's say if you're building a house, you need framers, you need foundation layers, you need carpenters, you need plumbers, you need an architect to plan it out. You need all of these different pieces. And so many people get started on a project and they get one guy building the thing. And what they're missing out on is they're missing out on a team. So this is kind of part of this lesson, is that if you're just getting started, I'm a proponent of outsourcing your first build to an outsourced team that can get it going until you get at least a minimum amount of revenue. Because this way you have a whole bunch of specialists. If you end up having just one developer build your idea for you, that's basically like having a carpenter build your house. The woodworking is going to be amazing, but the wiring is not going to work. The electricity is not going to work. The plumbing is going to be all over the place. The landscaping is going to be terrible. You get the point. So important lesson. All right. So actually here, yeah, I forgot I had the slide in here. All right. You don't want an orthopedist operating on your brain. You don't want a neurologist working on your bones. Same thing. You probably don't want this guy in the slide working on anything. So it's exactly the same. We compare this. We actually do a lot of work in healthcare, and we compare this for doctors to doctors a lot of the time. So we don't want your database specialist doing your UX, because that's not going to work. It's not going to. It's going to be terrible. In fact, you don't want your project manager most of the time doing your UX. I've had a lot of times where project managers come in and they're like, "Oh, I'll take a look at it." And they take a look at it, and we're like, "Yeah, those are good suggestions. We appreciate your time, but let's let the UX designer do their job." So, yeah. All right. Let's talk about the process. So now we've kind of talked about some big overarching things. I want to delve down into it now. Actually, before I get going into process, any questions so far about any of this stuff? Anything you want me to delve into for you? Benoit asked, most small business, a small company start with a few guys. I guess you can still get started with a few key profiles. Yeah, you can absolutely get started with a few key profiles. For sure, you kind of need to get started with a few key profiles. But actually, as Dan pointed out, in the beginning, you got to wear a number of hats. You can start with your marketing person. Like, I recommend having an in-house marketing person, because you're going to be doing marketing forever. Even whether you're doing enterprise SaaS or you're doing regular SaaS, you're doing small business SaaS, you're doing all these things, you're going to be marketing forever. So you definitely need your marketing people, marketing/sales in the beginning, which can also be you. But it's going to be really hard if you're doing full-time sales to also be doing full-time management of the project, of like building the project up, which is one of the reasons it's really nice to have a team that can just like get you going and has done this before. So, and that's actually part of the other thing I should have mentioned before. It's really nice if you end up outsourcing to a team, get somebody who does this all the time. get a team that builds these things and has built like 100 of them, because they're going to have a pre-existing platform that you just build off of most of the time. Whereas somebody who's never done it before, they're going to have more issues. So really important aspect of that. All right, so let's dig into process. If you guys have more questions about these things, let me know. Okay, the process. So this flowchart here, this was something that I actually built this flowchart, and it was built off of having done this for a long time, and it pulls in a number of different areas. So we've got our main build process here, and then we've got continuous integration, what I call continuous marketing, and then just general project success down here at the bottom. So we're going to dig into this right now. Okay, so I'm just going to cover it broadly, and then we're going to, if somebody has questions, we can delve in. So we start right here. We start with initial meetings, and I'm going to go through this fast because we got a lot of stuff. All right, initial meetings and produce estimates. So this is us as an agency working, but this works exactly the same if you're an entrepreneur building a SaaS project. So you're going to produce your estimate. You're going to cost your system. You're going to get your team together, you're going to talk about stuff, and then you're going to cost your system. And that's going to involve talking to a lot of different people, talking to developers. A lot of people want to cost the development side, especially developers and designers. They want to cost like the building of the system, and they don't think about beta release, alpha release, launching, what goes into launching, all the different pieces of that, all the content that has to get done, all the marketing that has to get done, all the PR that has to get done, all the support systems that have to get implemented, all the other stuff that has to get done to make sure this thing goes well. So when you're going in and you're producing your initial costing for the system, don't just let a designer and developer do it, because they're gonna be focused on the design and development, not a holistic system. So that's number one. First thing in there. Proposal, close deal, that's whether you're working with somebody else, you're doing it yourself, you still have, this is kind of your part of like getting your funding together, making sure things are going to go, planning it all out, etc. While you're doing, and then getting the client meeting and project started as kind of a kickoff, which is more if you're working with the agency or something than if you're doing it yourself, because you've been doing these client meetings throughout. What do we have? We have Ravi. Hey, Ravi. Ravi came in. I didn't see Ravi from earlier. So shout out to Ravi. He was on our last webinar as well. All right. And then while you're doing this stuff, simultaneously you're doing these things. So this is success planning. Success planning is something a lot of people don't think about. Success planning is figuring out what makes this a success. Are you going to sell it? Are you going to run this forever? There's lots of lessons to know about selling versus running forever. One of the things to know right off the sorry, I was reading Ravi's message. Hey, Jason, I joined a bit late. Right off the bat, something to know right off the bat is that you should think about whether you're going to sell this business or run this business when you first build it. And what I would say about that is that great businesses are bought, they're not sold. That means that if you're doing tons of revenue and you're super profitable and you're running this amazing business, more than likely, somebody who is the monster in that category is going to come in and just be like, yep, we want this business, we want this revenue, and we're going to make you an offer you can't refuse. That's how businesses get bought, not sold. Businesses get sold when they're not doing well. And whoever's running it needs to raise capital for other things or wants to exit or whatever. That's how businesses get sold. So knowing where you're going up front is worth it. This also helps you because you can plan who you're going to sell it to before you get going. So that I'm so bad about delving into each little piece in here. I'm going to try to skim past some of this stuff more quickly. Okay. So information architecture, we're going to talk about that in a minute. Project planning, we're going to delve into that. Project team sign off. Something people miss is they got to make sure that everybody on the team has taken a look at this plan and they've gone, yep, I agree that I can probably do that within some amount of risk for that amount of money. That's something really important when you get going. Project kickoff, we all kind of know how that goes. And then we've got content. A lot of times teams get going on building a system. They're building some a SaaS project and they're not thinking about content. They're thinking about, how do I build the thing? What goes into it? And I can tell you right now, that content, that keyword research, that SEO, start that at the beginning. Start it in the very, very, very beginning, because it's going to take you months to start ranking for stuff. If you do a great job of building your content when you first get started, by the time you're ready to launch this project, a few months or a year or whatever it is out, hopefully a few months, you're going to be ranking up high for that stuff already. But if you didn't, oh man, you got to start at the beginning. You got to start right. You're in trouble. You're not really in trouble, but there's a lot of stuff you could have done better. And then on top of that, you've got content not just for the SEO side, but you got content that goes into your site. And a lot of people kind of glaze by this content piece because they're like, oh, we'll figure out like how to write some instructions later. But if users can't use your system and they don't understand what to do, it's going to fail. So make sure you think about that content. Okay, moving right along. After we get our project kickoff, we got our wires, our flows, our style guides, our mood boards, and we can these two can be flipped. This one first or this one first, kind of goes back and forth. But this is something, this is where the designers and the flexibility piece comes in. See this? I got this step right here. And you can't read it because it's real tiny, but what it says is flows match architecture. What that means is that when your designers are working on these flows, and I'm going to show you a little bit more what those flows look like in a minute, but when your designers are working on those flows, you better go back and make sure that whatever you planned out in your initial information architecture way back here matches what they're building, because you priced your stuff. Your developers put together pricing based on what was over here. And if the designers get done and they're like, here's all the stuff, and you're like, that's great, thanks, give that to the developers, and they go, yeah, man, this is not what we talked about. This happens all the time, like all the time. So make sure that whatever your designers are planning, match that information architecture up here. All right, so then we've got concept design, secondary designs, design approval. This is a general design process. We could write a whole book just on design process. These are general steps in here. Then we're going to come down here. Ooh, sorry, there we go. Sorry, I'm like clicking on the, accidentally clicking on my chat. Okay, then we're going to come down here. We've got our programming kickoff, and you can run programming at the same time as you're running this design and this content. A lot of this programming stuff can be done simultaneously. You don't have to be doing design first. However, I will tell you, every time, 100% of the time that I tell the developers, y'all just go ahead and take care of that piece. The designers will come back later and do it. It always costs time. 100% of the time, it always costs me time. I always regret it. So make sure that you got good designs before your developers start implementing designs. Don't let your developers implement designs. All right, so then we're going to go through our general process: testing, debugging, alpha review, QA. This is fixing stuff. We'll get to this in a minute. Thank you, Michelle. Michelle, we're going to case study an issue in just a minute having to do with you and I, actually. All right, beta review, release candidate, social media stuff. You may have already started your social media when with this in your content. Then we go to system launch, system live. You got a post-mortem. It's really important to go back and double check what you did. Okay, that's the general first start of the build process. After that, we've got this middle section here, which is continuous integration. We're going to get into this more in a minute. And we got our continuous marketing, because remember, when you're building a SaaS, you're building a marketing company. And then finally, we've got our project success. And this is like how you're being successful and what you do with your money from there. Or you win and you just make profit. You go on vacation or do something else. So yeah, that's the end. If there's questions about this stuff, I'm happy to delve into this more. I gloss over this. I wrote an entire book that's basically about this process, literally a book about this process. So I can direct you guys to that in the future. Let's move along for now, though. All right. Plan or die. This didn't used to be so dramatic sounding. but I felt like it needed to be dramatic sounding. If you don't plan your stuff out, your business is going to struggle. It's going to struggle really hard. And I know that we haven't really talked that much about development yet. We're kind of like putting all these pieces together to delve into how to manage those developers. Love that side. Thank you, Ricardo. Okay, plan or die. Let's talk about that. The more you plan up front, the less your team will work and the less your project will cost. This comes back to one of those first lessons. What does an entrepreneur want? They want action. They want movement. They want things going. They want money in the bank. They want cash flowing. And they're not always great at planning. And that's me. That's me so bad. Like I get into these projects and I'm like, let's just move. Let's just sell something. Let's just get it out there, ship the thing. And I'm not saying that you should spend forever making something perfect. There's a great quote by, who was it? I just saw his picture the other day. There's a great quote that says, perfect is the opposite of good. I think that's right. It's something like that. Basically what it means is that if it's going to be perfect, you're never going to be good enough. So you still got to ship it. You still got to get it out there. But if you don't plan up front, you're going to struggle so hard and you're going to waste so much money. So do your planning. Like really, really, really plan this thing out. I think my next slide is the quote from Benjamin Franklin. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Our next little bit. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. There we go. So I couldn't see the thing. Is worth a pound of cure. It really is every single time. So the more you plan up front, the more you write that information architecture, the more you price these things out, the more you put together your project plan with your timelines and your dates, and the more you put together, you work with your project management team up front or your project manager or whoever that is, and really kind of the more you pad things a little bit as well, the better that project is going to end up with. Because what you'll do if you don't do this is you're going to end up redoing work, and that's going to cost you a lot of money. It can be so frustrating and so upsetting, especially being the entrepreneur, because you're like, yes, we shipped it. We got to redo the damn thing. And it happens all the time. You fail so hard because of not planning. It's so terrible. Should you charge for all your plane time? Yes, of course. If you're running thank you, Kristen. I think this is like a pointed question, because I'm bad in my agency. I'm bad about not always charging for all my planning time, because I'm an entrepreneur. I want that movement. I understand other people, and they're like, I want to get going. I want to know costs. But yeah, if you are on a build team, you should absolutely 100% always charge for your discovery time, because otherwise you're going to do a shitty job at it. You're not going to get it done right. And then that entrepreneur or whoever's hiring you is going to get upset because you did a half-assed job on your planning and now it's costing them more time, or it's costing you more time. So you should always plan for your discovery time. You should always plan for your charge for your discovery time. You should always put the time in to make it good, because otherwise it's going to be so heartbreaking when things fail. You got to redo it. All right. So let's talk about the big missing piece in this. This is the thing. All right, let's see what did Roland say here. Roland says, or if you lose the opportunity and have done discovery for free, or you lose the opportunity and have done discovery. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so the big missing piece. This is what I see so much from so many teams all over the place, is they don't write a thorough information architecture. So either just say yes or raise your hand or whatever. Actually, don't raise your hand because I got to undo it if you do that. If you've gotten a quote from a development team at some point in the past, and the quote went something like item hours, total number of hours. And that was it. That was all they were going to give you. That was the end of their discovery. How many of you guys have gotten this? I'm working with developers. I've gotten this 100%. In fact, somebody sent me, if you've gotten it, just say like, yeah, that's me. I've gotten that kind of thing from a developer before. And that was all they were going to work on. That was their information architecture. So I'm going to, by the way, in QA at the end, I'm going to deep dive into this. This is the one thing I'm really going to deep dive into. So the thing people are missing is the information architecture. And what that is after discovery is done, you can start, by the way, with just like item hours to give the client an estimate. But you don't know until you delve into each one of those pieces what that's actually going to cost. There's going to be stuff you're missing in there. If you get just a general hours amount and they're like, yep, that's the cost, those guys you're going to have some serious issues, because that's just not going to work. It's not going to work. If their plan is not, or if your plan is not to do a full information architecture document. So, here's the information architecture document. So when you do an information architecture document, you have to go in and plan every piece, every section, every subsection, everything. This is part of that upfront planning I'm talking about. It's part of discovery, but you gotta write it out. If you don't write it out and you don't look at it and you don't say, yep, that's exactly what we're doing, at least for phase one, at least for the MVP, or at least for whatever the next release is you're doing, oh my God, you're gonna get hurt so bad. So stick around to the end and I'm gonna show you how to write one of these. Once again, I wrote a whole book on this, so there's tons of information on this out there. Actually, in my book, but not out there, because that was why I read the book, because there's not much out there about how to do this. If you're on a build team, it's super important you also do this, because it keeps everybody accountable. Clients will come back. If you're the entrepreneur, very often you're going to come back and you're going to be like, what about this thing? We talked about this. Why didn't you build this thing? And if it's not in that information architecture, as a developer, you're not really responsible for it. You just, like, this happened to me. When was it? This was, 3 weeks ago. I had a client come in, one of our largest clients, and we're building a SaaS. It's kind of SaaS system for them. And they were like, what about this thing? You said you were going to do this thing. And fortunately, in that information architecture, we had talked about that thing. And it very specifically showed how everything fit together as a big giant note that said, this item was discussed and we all agreed we're doing this in phase 2. It has not been priced out. It just saved us so much time and so much money and so much frustration, because we would have had to compromise with them if we hadn't written that out. We would have been in a bad spot. So for you as the entrepreneurs, if you're you as the developers, for all of you, write it out. Write it out really, really well, because it will save you so much headache, so much heartache. And that's one of the biggest steps to managing developers, because if they need specifications. So when you write this information architecture and they have those designs done from those designers, they have the specifications they need to build the project. And if you priced all this stuff out in your information architecture, your project managers have the resources and the timelines they need, because you've got the cost, the hours broken down piece by piece, so they know how to plan this project. Any questions right now about this? All right, cool. If you do, just post it up there and I'll answer you. All right, so I'm going to go through this real quick one more time, and then we're going to move on to the next step. Information architecture, that is the glue that holds your project together. It is what keeps people accountable and maintains expectations. It's a flexible, always changing document. You can change it. Yeah, Jice, I'm going to share all my project management stuff at the very end. I'm going to give you like a full on. I still want to pull away from the presentation to open one up, but I've got one open in another window. I'm going to go into it. Yeah, and I'll absolutely. Oh yeah, well, I'll share an example, and there's your thumbs up. Yeah. Okay. It covers pricing, hours, features. Moves to the PM system after the start of the project. And what that means is that after you've planned the whole thing out, we're going to take all those things, break them into tasks or issues or features or whatever, and move them into a project management system so that the project can be managed. The information architecture is a great place to start, but it is not your project management system. For that, you need something like JIRA, which is, if you're doing a SaaS system, I highly recommend something like JIRA or Pivot, or the Pivotal Tracker. Oh man, there's a whole bunch of different things, project management systems out there. You can also use something like Asana, but if you're doing real heavier dev, you should use like the actual real tools for that, which is something more like JIRA. It states what you're building and what you're not building. It covers some of the scope, the SOWs in the not scope of work. I wrote that it should be SOPs. Sorry about that. Covers some of the SOPs, standard operating procedures. This W should not be here. I'm sorry. That was my bad in there. SOPs of the project. So it's going to be like step 1, step 2, step 3. We're doing this thing. Because sometimes that's part of your build and it needs to be incorporated into your planning. And it needs to be comprehensive. You can't have a halfway done information architecture and expect to have a fully planned project. It's not going to work. It has to be a comprehensive scope of work. So these scope of work documents, with everything written out, for a SaaS system, can be anywhere between 50 pages and 500 pages. Really, really, that's what it takes. You're planning a gigantic project. If you want to plan this stuff out and you want to get it done and you want to know how much money it's going to cost and you want to know where your different steps are going to be and how much time it's going to take to do all this stuff, how much money it's going to take, you want to be successful getting it out there, you want to have all your team be able to be on target on all their things, that's what it takes. So do your homework. Yeah, I see Jai just posted, ouch. Yeah, it takes time. It's expensive. It costs money. But that's why we're here talking, because you guys are willing to do this stuff and most other people aren't. So do your homework. Let's keep going. All right. So when you're doing all this information architecture, this is the kind of stuff you need to take into account. It's not just the build of the system. It's not just like what the system does. It's all of this. You got to plan out your marketing website. What pages does it have? How are you putting in your pricing? Is there some sort of calculator on there that's going to tell the user how they're pricing stuff? How are you integrating that into your billing systems? Are you pulling that data from Stripe so you only have to change it in one place, or Braintree or whatever, etc.? On that marketing website, you're going to have things like a blog for content marketing. And you got to know how that blog is set up. You got to plan out your SEO on that blog. You got to think about what's going into that. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that blog. That's an entire career of just SEO content writing. And it's very effective, by the way. If you're not doing that already for your SaaS systems, you should absolutely be doing content marketing. If you're doing enterprise SaaS, maybe it's a little bit different. But if you're doing standard SaaS, you should almost always be doing content marketing. Your user management systems, and this isn't just users managing their information, it's you managing their information. There's all sorts of stuff that goes into that. User onboarding, it's a huge part of any SaaS system. It really has to be thought out. Your knowledge base, how are you connecting the data for all these things? Payment systems, payment management. This is usually something like Stripe or Braintree or whatever, but you may also have custom payment management systems. If you're dealing with large amounts of money and you don't want to pay Stripe's 3% or Braintree's, was it 30 cents and 3% or whatever, you might have a third party or other custom payment management system. You can get those prices down to 1.75, 1.85%, down from 3%. It's a huge difference. So if you're taking big amounts of money, you got to think about that. And I mean like you're taking $10,000 check instead of like 10 $1,000 checks. So it might be worth it either way. Just saying. Your portal, your dashboard, what all that stuff does, your admin panel, this is a huge part that nobody ever thinks about. They're like, oh yeah, I'm going to build the thing and worry about how I manage people later. And then as soon as you start having customers, you have to worry about managing people. And all of a sudden, unless you're the developer and you can manage them directly in the database, which is a terrible idea, you got to have that admin panel. As soon as you hire somebody, you got to have that admin panel. If you're a developer, if you're not a developer, you got to have the admin panel to begin with. Transactional emails. These things always take longer than you think. They always take longer. Somebody's got to read every one of those things. Does everybody know what transactional emails are? Anybody not know? If you just say, I don't know what it is, I'll come back and I'll tell you what that is. What else? User tagging, lead scoring. Nobody ever thinks to put this stuff in there when they're first building a system, but you got to know what areas people haven't finished their flows. You got to know, like, I got to send a different email to this guy than that guy, so you got to plan this stuff out. Third-party management, tracking, reporting, unit testing, regression testing, documentation, all of this stuff you need to plan out up front. Because if you don't plan this stuff out up front, you're gonna suffer. It's gonna hurt real bad. So that's what goes into your information architecture. All right. I put this slide in to remind myself to deep dive into this. Any questions about this stuff so far? Because we're going to move on now. Let's see how we go on time. I'm behind on time. I'm really behind. So I'm going to try to fly through this a little bit faster. Okay. Lesson 4. SaaS systems live and die on user experience. This is something that developers, if you have a developer working on something, they don't really understand this a lot of the time. If people can't use your system, it's not going to work. No chance it's going to work. So I'm going to do a real quick case study on MedRev, which is one of my systems, to show how I lost time, how I should have managed this better. And this was a matter of managing a developer and managing a designer and managing the project. So now we're talking about the real guts of managing this thing. All right. This is talking about the MedRev location setup process. All right. It was planned by a designer, me, built by a coder, Michelle, who's on this call, designed by a designer, me, and then rebuilt by the coder. So this is a story of how we could have done this better. All right. All right. So initially, I had some ideas about how this location system needed to work. I didn't design it. I was just like, all right, Michelle, I'm busy right now. I didn't plan this out properly. It's my fault. You just go ahead and implement what you think is a good design on it. And I want to point out, Michelle is a great project manager. She's a great coder. She's not a front-end developer. And she told me when she built this, she's like, I'm not a front-end developer. You know that. I'm like, or I'm not a front-end designer. And I was like, I know, don't worry. It'll be fine. It was kind of fine. So she built this. It's great. You can look at the location. You can see who's in there. It's one big giant form. It has all the different pieces, the pieces of data that the system needs. You can see everything right there all in one area. It turns out it's really hard to use this because the average person doesn't know what these things are. They don't know what the survey cutoff is. They don't know how to get this Yelp review link. They don't know how to get this Facebook review page. They don't know how to get this place ID for Google. They don't necessarily understand what is the location contact versus their contact. And there's nothing, before we change a little bit here, there's nothing that said that this needed to be an email address. So when we got into it, I was like, it works. It is functional. It works. But it is not usable. So I went back through and I redesigned it. And this is a redesign of how this page should look. So now we have logo, we've got more information placed in different ways to make it a little more clear about how to use the system. We've got these big buttons over here, so it's really easy for people to click and understand what they're getting to. This is what was done by a front-end designer, a UX designer. It's not, to be totally honest, this is not the best design in the entire world, but it's definitely usable. It's definitely usable, and it was quick to implement. So this was the new design. And then when you click on things, you get these pop-ups. We built this like checking system so that users didn't have to just find the thing and kind of guess this, if it was right or not. We've got this thing that you just put in their address, and it gets their address for them, then it gets their ID for them, and it gets all this other stuff for them. And we put together all of this flow right here that flows out to all these different pages. And altogether, it took me, about 33 hours to design all of the flows for that location stuff. And it took about 28 hours. Michelle, would you say that's about right? I kind of guessed. I looked at some of the logs. It was kind of a guess for the amount of time it took you to implement all the designs that I did. So that's 50-something hours, right, of time that we could have probably saved about 25 hours. Yeah, 2 days. There you go. So I would say, given all the other things that went into this, if I had just done the design up front and then handed her a fully done design and said, do it like this and had our talks up front, instead of doing it twice, we could have saved at least 2 days of work. And this is just one little piece of the system. This is one little thing. If we had done, if in big systems, if you don't go through the right processes and you waste time like this, you can end up months behind. You're talking tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars lost because of stupid decisions and just a lack of planning. And this is a great way to show how that happens. And this is on our projects. So like I said, I'm guilty as well. I knew when I did it, it was probably a bad decision. I didn't realize when I did it, though, how much money it was going to cost me. It gets me every time. Like I said, plan your stuff or it's going to hurt really bad. Really, really bad. Days of time lost because I didn't think about something and I didn't plan it out and I didn't write it out. So there's a great example for you. Oh, another real quick tidbit of information. Pro tip. Projects don't get behind months at a time. They get behind 1 day at a time. One bad decision like this at a time. Projects don't just start at a month behind or 2 months behind or 6 months behind. They start, so what was this one? Somebody just posted, Ricardo's got to go. No worries, Ricardo. I'll talk to you soon, man. Projects don't get behind, they get behind 1 day at a time. That's where I was going with this. And it's because of decisions like this and generally a lack of planning like this. All right. Let's see what I wrote here. If users can't understand your system, doesn't matter how good your tool is, business ain't going to work. All right. Lesson 5. I'm going to fly through the rest of this. We covered some of this. I'm so sorry it's taking me so long today, guys. Okay. Unicorns can't breathe underwater. This is one of my favorites. So this goes back to where we were at the very beginning. All right. This is what I get from so many clients and also from so many SaaS entrepreneurs. Don't worry. We got a guy. We got a developer, and he's going to build the whole thing for us. Awesome. Tell me about him. Which guy do you have? Is he a project manager? Is he a developer? Is he a designer? Is he an entrepreneur? What is he? What is he? He's a unicorn. He could do everything. Amazing. Can he breathe underwater? I bet he can't because unicorns can't breathe underwater. So, all right here, I can't say it. The things that make you strong are the things that make you weak. And this is really, really important. So, obviously, living above land, the unicorn needs to breathe air, and that makes him strong, but it also makes him weak when he's underwater. And this is what applies. This is like a key piece of this whole thing. What makes a great project manager good a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times, is that they are so obsessive about their timelines. They have to get it right or it drives them nuts. And on the flip side, on the flip side of that, it means that they're pushy about things. Not always, but they've learned how to deal with it. But that's the strength, is being right on time, but it has a corresponding weakness. The things that make designers great is their flexibility and their design, their creativity, but it makes them weak because they can't always think logically. They're not illogical, but the ability to think in a very linear pattern and be able to understand the same kinds of things that developers have in many cases that are weak on these things. And the same in the flip side for developers. The things that make you strong are the things that make you weak. So you need a team to do this, not a person to do this. Unicorns can't breathe underwater. Sometimes you need a turtle, not a bird, or a unicorn. And by the way, turtles can't breathe underwater either. But the thing that makes him super strong and makes him impervious to attack is the fact he's got this big giant shell. But it also means he's super slow. But that's fine. Sometimes you need a bird. But if he gets attacked by another bird, he's going to die. Same things here. All right. And then I'm gonna harp on this for one more second and we'll be done with this lesson. 1,000 hours minimum. I'm sure you guys have heard this before. 10,000 hours minimum for mastery. So if it takes you 10,000 hours to be really, 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 really good at something, let's just say that that's like these kinds of numbers for all these things. I got actually the math broken down. I'm going to flip by the slides in a second. So an architect is generally somebody who's gotten lots of experience in lots of areas. So I'm going to say it takes 10 plus years to be a really good architect, 5 plus years to be project manager, designer, developer, all of this stuff. You can't do all this stuff at once. You can't be all of these things at the same time. So here's my nonstop master, 3.25 years. The more reasonable master, 6.25 years. It's 20 years of work to really be amazing at everything. Turns out the internet's only been around for 20 something years. So you're not going to find the guy who can do it. And then also the things that make you strong are the things that make you weak. All right. I'm going to fly through this because I'm almost out of time. All right. Choosing the right tech can make or break your project. I made this mistake with Brainleaf, and this is part of getting in to understand what you're doing. Because if you build your system on the wrong technology, you're going to have to rebuild your system, or you're going to have major struggles. So you really need to understand this. You need to get second opinions, third opinions. Don't just get started because one guy told you that this is the right thing to do. Really delve into the technology. You need to understand the technology, or at least understand the what goes into it. I'm going to skip this because we're almost out of time. Avoid Visual Basic, yes. All right, so coincidentally, Joyce, I'm going to tell a slightly different story. We have a client that built something in Visual Basic, and we are rebuilding their entire thing. They did build it 15 years ago, but they built it in Visual Basic, and we are completely rebuilding their entire system for them right now. Google actually figured some stuff out about their systems that impacted the way that we're doing things. I'm going to skip it for now because we're almost out of time and we've got a couple more things I want to cover. All right. Rocket science. This is a rocket engine. It's really complicated. It is rocket science. So let's say we needed to add a new thing to this rocket engine, like a new whatever. I'm not a rocket scientist. Do we have any rocket scientists here? Maybe we do. You never know. But if we need to add something new, think about all the ways that all of these little connectors need to be reconnected. It's going to be a lot of stuff, right? It's the same thing with a lot of development projects, and people don't think about it. They're like, oh, you just go and you wave your little wand and it gets done, right? No, I gotta take this doohickey off, and I gotta reconnect all these wires here. I'm gonna put the wires here, I'm gonna put the wires there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It is just the same, and rocket science might be more complicated. And I want to show you real quick how this is the same and how this affects your development. Complexity. So if we have 2 features, we have 2 connections. Technically, you probably have 4 connections, but we're gonna go with 2 for right now. We got 3 features. We got 6 connections. 4 is 12. 6 is 30. So by adding 6 features to a system, we are quadratically increasing the complexity of that system. That means that now when I go to test, I'm not testing this one new feature we added. I have to test the connection to all of these other features. And generally, I have to come back and test how that connection affected all of those other features. And this is something having to do with your management that people don't understand, because what they do is they plan for the development of the feature, and they don't plan for all the time it's going to take to build all of those connections or test all of those connections, because you have to, because otherwise it's going to break. I have a lot more to say about this, but I have to go fast, so I'm going to move on. And here's your slope, by the way. Here's your quadratic slope on a 2-to-1. 2 connections for every, 1 connection for every feature. It's really going to be more than that. So, I froze. Thank you, Michelle. Can everybody hear me? Just say yes if you can hear me. Okay, cool. Thank you. Did anybody else catch that freeze? Or is that just Michelle? No freeze. All right, cool. Just you, Michelle. You froze, not me. Okay. Moving right along. What this affects, this complexity, everything. Entrepreneurs are so bad about this, about adding and adding and adding and adding all these features, and they didn't plan it. They didn't put all this stuff in. They didn't account for all this complexity. They didn't increase their testing quadratically, or their other aspects of their system, their other planning quadratically. And then they get behind and they're like, why am I behind? Why are my developers behind? Why is everybody not doing their job? And the answer is because you didn't do your job, because you didn't plan it Also kind of because you didn't think about it because maybe you didn't know. But it's fine. Now you know. And if people get behind, now it's your fault. Let's keep moving. This affects everything. So design, development, integration, sales, success, marketing, testing, project management, times, and morale. When things get behind like this, the bottom two items start suffering badly. Success starts suffering, your team's morale starts suffering. And that's something you have to manage when you're managing developers. If you know about this complexity, if you know what they're getting into, if you know to not just listen to everything they say and actually think about it and get into it, understand what they're doing, plan these things out, work with them on the planning. Don't just be the main be the main driving force behind everything. Don't just hire it out. Then you'll know how complexity affects everything. Okay, I put this little fun slide in here. All your monies do belong to complexity, Cat. They do. Complexity is what kills so many projects. This increase in complexity will just eat your money. Complexity Cat will eat all of your money. Okay, lesson 7, and by the way, we're almost done. As soon as you have product validation, start building unit tests. Because what happens is this, that complexity starts going up, right? We just covered that complexity increases quadratically. If you have to manually retest every time you build something, as your complexity increases, so does your testing time, and it can increase really, really, really a lot. You're talking every new release, you're going to end up with days and days and days or weeks of testing. But if you've built in your 10 to 20% of time to build unit tests after you have an MVP, you end up with a much more flat curve for testing before each new release. If you don't understand what this means, you can ask me and I can delve into it much more. And by the way, this is in the continuous integration model, this is where this fits in right here. If you haven't seen the continuous integration model, talk to me later, I can take you through it. But this is generally, by the way, if you recall from my process, this was built in at the bottom left quadrant of our process document. It didn't have this fancy infinity symbol thing going on, but it had all the different aspects of it. So that's the testing part right here. If you don't start building your testing, you're gonna struggle. You're gonna struggle so hard. It's one of these things that can really crush the next release, the next set of things you want to do, and it can crush it really fast. Okay, let's see what I wrote in this one. All right, yeah. So this takes you kind of through. I'm going to fly by this because we already kind of talked about it, and we're almost out of time. So this is how that. Don't live with regret. Don't regret not building your test because it's just silly to do that. Okay, Q&A time. Here we are. Now it's time. I got to the end. I'm a little bit behind, but let's. I can delve into some of these information architectures. I can answer questions. I think I had one other thing that I was gonna delve into. Let me stop screen share and pull up my other screen. Let's see what I got. Oh yeah, I got an estimate file. I've got an information architecture file that I can show you guys. So what do you guys want to hear? You want to hear about information architecture? Do you want to hear about estimating? Do you want to just ask questions? It's up to you. Anyone? And we've got some people writing out their questions right now. Okay, from Benoit. Could you share about the tools you use for project management and CI? Yes, absolutely. I will absolutely share you on that. And I think this is a great time to also add Michelle to our conversation. And actually, before I jump into that real quick, I know that it's we're over time, and so if anybody has to drop off, cool, awesome. I'll send you guys the recordings. If you want to stick around and ask questions, feel free. I'll be answering questions until we're pretty much out of questions, or 15 minutes or so, something like that. So yes, Benoit, let me get into that, and I'm going to promote Michelle and Lucas, or actually Michelle up to a panelist real quick. So give me 1 second. Let me do that so that she can answer these questions along with me. And we're going to say promote panelist. There we go. And Michelle, you are now a panelist. and you're unmuted, so you can talk as well. And Benoit, I'm going to show you how we do this. So, Michelle, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Can you hear me?
I hear you. So does everyone else?
Do you want to see me?
If you'd like.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, it says I can't start my video. So
no worries. I'm going to do a screen share, and I'm going to take Benoit into using JIRA. All right. So, Michelle, which project should we bring up? Should we bring up BrainWave? Should we bring up MedRev?
I kind of like the way I set up the Agile board in MedRev.
Okay. All right. So let's take a look here. Can everybody see my screen? You should be able to.
I can see it.
There we go. Okay. Good to go. Thank you, Roland. All right. So we like to use JIRA. The reason I like to use JIRA is this is an enterprise tool. This is for doing the big jobs. And it has all of the pieces you need to be able to do the big jobs. What this has, it allows us to have sprints, a standard agile process. You can see here we've got versions, we've got epics. Here's our epics listed out. We've got our tasks, our individual tickets in here. We've got our different sprints and our backlog. And this integrates right in with Bitbucket so that we can come in here on our right-hand side and see, let me see, we've got our fixed version, we've got commits, we've got branches. So we can see per issue where the branch is. And this is something that people screw up a lot of time. And this is something that is actually a really important aspect. When you're doing actually, Michelle, why don't you explain branch management and how that affects your issues and how these are named and connected together?
Sure. So it's set up so that if you either create a branch in Bitbucket with the same number, or if you make a commit that mentions the ticket number in the commit message, it'll show up in JIRA on that ticket so that you can actually go directly and see the code that's involved in fixing that ticket.
Exactly. So right here, you can. What this does is it helps us keep each individual branch separated so that we can say, like, if this developer, let's say one developer is working on one ticket, we can see exactly how that one ticket, what the code is for that one ticket. We don't have like 20 tickets all kind of merging together into a whole bunch of things. If we need to come in here and pull out Pavel's patient's API and say, oh, this one thing is not working properly, we can identify that one single piece and pull it back out. Or we can delve into it. Or if we've got merges going on, we got Stavel and Pavel working together. Never realized until right now that those rhyme. We can see how that merge went together and what ticket or what issue that Stavel had that isn't mixing in with Pavel's work. You can see Michelle's stuff here. We can see how it's all coming together. And because we've got all of our tickets really clearly noted, we can come into here and see how it's all put together. I should have opened it in a separate tab. Whoops. Hold on, I got to go back to JIRA real quick. And we can see how it's all put together properly. So does that, for Dice, for Roland, Benoit, does that make sense what I just said? I know it's kind of getting deep into the weeds, but I want to make sure that it's real clear how these tickets are separated and how that branch management is done. Cool, good. Because it's so important. It's so important. What I've seen so many times is you have a developer that's worked on like 30 different tickets. It's all in one branch. Mm-hmm. 30 of those tickets are all totally screwed up. And when you go to merge that stuff in, it's a mess. And because you did that, you can't tell who talked about what in your, like, what was the communication about this one issue. in your management area here. So then you can't figure out who's talking about what was decided about what, and it's a mess. It's such a mess. So don't let that happen to you. Make sure it's all put together here. Michelle, do you want to add anything to this, to the way this is done? And does anybody want to ask questions about like active sprints or sprint boards or anything like that?
Yeah, I would say that it also enables peer review. So you have one ticket for an issue, and in Bitbucket, the other tool, you can designate a reviewer, and only once that reviewer approves it is it merged into the testing branch. And just with this active sprint, I'd like to point out that there's an under review column, and that's where it goes when it's ready for a code review. Then the ready for testing column is where it goes once it's been reviewed and it's been merged into the testing branch. That way, Kristen, our tester on this project, knows that she can look at it. But if we had Jenkins set up the way we did for Brainleaf, we wouldn't need this column, because once it's code reviewed and merged into testing, the build would be automatic. It would be automatically deployed to our test environment. So yeah, that's how
you've got a Jenkins setup coming in a future sprint, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool. So that's how we're doing this right now. And you can see how when we click on this, we get everything from videos in here. We can see what sprint we're in. We can see how big the issue is, what code is connected, what's the status, the notes on it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Does this answer your question, Benoit? Is this? Do you want me to dive into any more of this, or do you have a pretty good understanding about what's going on here? And does anybody else want me to dig into this more? If you guys want, I can do another webinar that just talks about how we set this stuff up. I've actually thought about doing a couple of videos that just walk people through all the little pieces, because as a developer, I'm looking at this and I know all the stuff, and I can look at it. It's a tool I use every day, but I know that there's so much stuff that you guys are, if you're not used to using this, you're looking at it and going, yeah, man, this is kind of clear like mud a little bit. So I'm happy to go in. If you send me a message afterwards, I can do some videos for everybody and explain more about how the system works. Okay. Michelle, do you want to add anything to this?
No, not at the moment.
Awesome.
Did you want to talk about releases? The cool stuff it can do if you look at the release and how it can point out errors and stuff, or is that too deep?
No. Does everybody know? Does anybody have questions about release management? Oh, this one's not set up in here. I forgot.
If you click on the version number, it'll show you what you're looking for.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, the 1.0.0.
Gotcha. I will. I'll answer that one second. I'm going to answer Jice's question real quick. How do you prioritize, and who prioritizes? That's a great question. It's a really, really great question. So usually on our projects, we have either a product manager, project manager, or developer who is going to consult with that stakeholder. So the stakeholder is going to be, all right, hey, Roland, I know that you and I were going to catch up later today. Do you want to catch up? You want me just to give you a call? You can just shoot me an email, and I'll give you a call after the webinar's all done. By the way, Roland and I went to high school together like 20 years ago. And he's missing our high school reunion. But he's in California, so that's fine. Yeah. Who prioritizes? The entrepreneur prioritizes, because like day to day, minute by minute, there is a lot. There's little things that can be prioritized by other people, but during those Scrum meetings, that that entrepreneur, that stakeholder needs to be there to determine what gets done next, because that impacts business decisions. do we focus on doing this thing in the development that's going to make it better long term, or do we focus next on doing this thing in development that's going to enable us to sell something right now? Those are the kinds of questions. These are business questions. These are not developer questions, but it's getting deep into it and really looking at all these things that makes the decision, that enables you to make the decision on this, Jace. So you, the entrepreneur or the stakeholder, has to get in and work with the team and be that person that drives it forward. Does that answer your question? And Michelle, I muted you. Crystal clear. Awesome. All right, let's see. I think that covers any other questions from anybody else? I think it's about time. It's about 12:30. We're about an hour and a half in. So let's take some final questions and wrap up from there. And any other questions, any other issues, any other concerns, anything you guys want me to talk about at our next webinar? I know we didn't talk about getting like real deep into like how exactly do I manage every single piece of things, but I gave you guys the biggest, broadest stuff that I could do and the biggest mistakes that I've made and the ways that I account for those things. So if you want to deep dive into other real specific things, I'm happy to do that in our next webinar. Just let me know and we can go into that. This is like doing these kinds of projects is an entire career, and it takes years and years and years to learn all this stuff. So it's hard to cover everything in one webinar. Not seeing any other questions popping up. So if you got it, if you want one right now, raise your hand. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and say thank you guys so much. I really appreciate your time on this. If anybody has any further questions or any issues, feel free to shoot me an email. Thank you guys so much. This recording will be available, and feel free to check us out at jhmediagroup.com. We are a SaaS build team, and we can help you out as well. And for anybody who's here that just wants help with stuff, feel free to just call me, and I'll give you my recommendations on things. Have a great day, guys. Thanks so much.